When TikTok first launched, I remember making the joke that TikTok's greatest sin is convincing an entire generation of kids that lip syncing is a legitimate form of entertainment. Oh, how naive I was. Oh god. There was always something sketchy about TikTok. It never really made sense to me. And that's not just my old millennial ass not being able to relate with the kids. I mean, the app itself, the way the platform worked, as well as the strange social conventions that had developed there. The way people memed on the app, the way people socialized there, it always seemed a bit alien, uncanny. TikTok's algorithm was rewarding people for humiliating themselves and encouraging kids to adopt self-destructive behavior.
A dangerous dare that could end up in your child's social media feed. Young people setting themselves on fire, and they're taking videos of what happens next.
One person has already died. That happened in New York State. We checked with our local hospitals, and so far, no one has been treated locally, but it is spreading. Some of the videos posted to social media are as recent as just a few hours ago.
You already know that social media is bad. I don't need to get stuck on that point. You're all old enough to know that social media is a tool that is used against us. As they say with anything that we don't have to pay for, if you're getting the service for free, that means you're the product. Every single thing we watch, everything we like, we share, we save, is recorded and fed to an algorithm. The bots use the metadata recorded off of us to better predict us so that they can advertise to us as well as keep us engaged with their apps. I mean, who knows in the future what kind of things that kind of metadata could be used for. But not only that, the metadata collected on us is also sold to different companies and corporations, so they too can better predict us as well as gear products towards us and God knows what else. And of course, what makes TikTok more sketchy is that it's owned by a Chinese-run company, which technically means it's controlled by the Chinese government. There have been growing concerns over the last 5 years that TikTok is just spyware used to monitor foreign nations and manipulate them with propaganda. Some people don't seem to know this, but TikTok is banned in China. Their own app is banned in their own nation. It's literally illegal to access TikTok if you're in the nation of China. Yes, China has their own version of TikTok, but it's really different from ours. Children are only allowed to access their version of the app for a few hours a day, and the algorithm is designed to feed them educational videos, as well as approved Chinese propaganda. And often the reason they use for banning Western apps in China is because they don't want their citizens to be corrupted. So if they have their own version of TikTok in China and they don't want their own citizens to be corrupted by the Western version of the app, then that has to mean that the Chinese government knows that the Western version of TikTok is destructive. It's basically an admission. This was an old video idea that I finally got around to, so I know most of you are up to date on this. But when I first started writing this, they were still just trying to get TikTok banned in the United States. But eventually their president passed a legislation essentially giving TikTok an ultimatum. So the United States is going to ban TikTok by January of 2025 unless the Chinese owner is able to sell the app to an American company. So no more Chinese control of the app seems to be the point of that legislation. See, I'm not usually in favor of bans or censorship, but the United States should have done this to TikTok a long time ago. I think that one of the reasons it took them so long is because they were probably in denial about the issue, and now tensions with China are so bad that they had no choice. Everyone has to be more realistic now. There are economic tensions between the West and China, and they've been going on for like 10 years. But it really ramped up within the last 4. A lot of things that were being blamed on the cough, like the supply chain issue, were really just manifestations of these economic tensions. For example, a couple of years ago, China banned the use of Tesla cars. Did you hear about that? Technically, you're still allowed to own and drive a Tesla in China, but you're not allowed to drive it into an airport or one of their major cities. Police or security will stop you. So why can't you drive a Tesla into a Chinese airport? Because Tesla cars are covered in cameras. Those American-built electric vehicles, in theory, could be used to record all sorts of sensitive information in China. Tesla cars could literally be used as a surveillance device. And are the Chinese crazy for believing that the Americans could do such a thing? No, the United States would 100% do something like that. But by admitting that they have this concern about American-built electric vehicles, China is essentially admitting that that's what they're doing with their electric vehicles in the West. Think of Temu. We all know Temu. Hopefully you know that term in a negative connotation only. I don't know anybody out there using Temu. That's like a Chinese version of Amazon, essentially. But only a couple of months after Temu was launched in the West, they were caught using spyware to monitor their foreign customers. Temu didn't get banned though, for some reason, even though they showed their hand immediately. And over time, somehow everybody seemed to forget this, and a little while later Temu comes back after the controversy is blown over, and now they're offering us all sorts of cool free stuff. Wow. And almost all of their free gifts are electronics. Right. I've seen Temu push ads for free keyboards or free devices that plug into your phone. Oh, wow, Temu, that's so nice of you. I'm sure it's not because you want to keylog our home computers and record information off of our smartphone. And only a little while after China banned Tesla cars, Russia and China both banned the use of iPhones. Anyone who works for either the Chinese or Russian government is not allowed to use an iPhone. For a little while, there were even a ton of videos circulating of Russians gladly destroying their phone. Like, they made it a whole spite thing. They made a really big deal out of this. They played it off like it's a national pride thing, and one of the reasons China gave for banning the iPhone is because they wanted to promote the use of their own Chinese-built smartphone, which was partially true, but in reality, it was for the exact same reason that they banned Tesla. China just did not want the Americans to use iPhones to spy on Chinese government officials. But the point I'm getting at here is that ultimately, all of this is happening because there are major economic tensions between the Eastern and Western markets. The kind of crazy stuff that's been happening around us lately and the weird stuff that they've been showing us in the media really reminds me of the way things used to be during the Cold War. I mean, a lot of the same stuff is happening today that happened in the Cold War. Actually, this whole iPhone ban fiasco happened during the infamous chip shortage that started in 2020. There was a global computer chip shortage, and on top of that, there were a ton of economic sanctions making it impossible for good chips to be shipped to the global market. At this point during the shortage, Russia was resorting to doing things like ripping chips out of toasters so that they could put them in their missiles. That's how desperate everybody was getting for chips. Well, it was in the midst of all of these shortages and sanctions and bannings that China decided to launch their own 5G capable phone for the first time, which should have been impossible with all those sanctions in mind. So they kind of had to flub the technology a little bit. They said that it was all new technology, but they literally just Frankensteined older technology to make it work for the new network. And at this time, China was also launching a whole bunch of different lines of electric vehicles as well. Basically, they were trying to become self-sufficient and a global leader in all of that technology. What was weird about those electric cars, though, is that giant fleets of them ended up just rotting in multiple giant parking lots because there wasn't actually a market for those cars. They built tens of thousands of them with no consideration as to who would even be able to buy these things. They keep their own citizens too poor to afford cars. Only people that live in major cities tend to be wealthy enough to own a car. So why would China try to develop their own 5G capable smartphone in the midst of all of this economic distress? Because China wants to control all of the technology within their own national borders. They're not just competing with the Western market on communication technology. They're competing with the West on domination of surveillance. When you're dealing with a nation that's as obsessed with monitoring everything people do, you can bet that they would be just as willing to try to watch everyone else outside of their nation as well, if given the opportunity. I'm not saying all this because I want to scare everybody. I just want you all to be aware. Remember what Edward Snowden said. If your own government is watching you, then other governments are watching you too. Like I explained in my Mothman was a Russian spy video, during the Cold War, the government, the military, and the media worked together to create spin around public perception of special events. The reason why UFO and cryptid stories became so popular in the 60s is because the military and the media were using alien and cryptid stories to cover for military activity. So, how do you know that we're in a Cold War right now? Because the media has been pushing stories of UFOs for a few years now. They're trying so hard to get you convinced that aliens are real. As soon as the news started sharing videos of UFOs that were released by the Pentagon, I knew that they were going to try to start pushing some fake alien bullshit on us again to cover for their military activities, just like they did in the 60s. Do you remember a few years ago where the United States Navy reported multiple instances where their ships were being harassed by UFO swarms? Well, they were lying to us, obviously. Everything that they showed us was easily explainable. I even debunked a bunch of them in an old series. Those UFO swarms that they encountered out in the ocean were probably Chinese spy drone technology. And they probably didn't tell the truth about what they encountered out in the ocean because they didn't want to panic the public, and they didn't want to come clean about just how severe these international economic tensions had gotten. They didn't want to come clean about how bold China had gotten. And since then, Chinese jets have even harassed Canadian helicopters, forcing them out of airspaces. So like, China's getting bold. Only a few months after the US Navy reported those UFO swarms in the ocean, people in North America started spotting these giant balloons flying over the United States and Canada. Do you remember that? They shot one of them down using an F-22 as a show of force. The whole thing played off like a novelty, but that was supposed to send a message. It's like we weren't seeing it, you know? China was getting frustrated that they kept sending all these spy drones out, and they kept getting reported in the media as UFO swarms. All of this fancy equipment is getting reported as supernatural events. So they just get fed up and they send over a bunch of cartoonishly large balloons with giant Chinese symbols on the side. It's like they were saying, hey, get the hint, it's us, we're spying on you, we can see you, it's not aliens, we're using balloons now. But the United States covers up their own military activity with supernatural explanations. Like in Rendlesham Forest, they were probably looking for a weapon out in the woods, and it was top secret, so they had to pretend that it was aliens. A couple weeks ago in New Jersey, people were seeing a bunch of swarms of drones, and there were a bunch of stories about it being aliens, but the reality was that those drones were probably looking for something like a weapon, and they can't tell you that in the media, so they just have to say, we don't know what's going on with the drones. They don't tell you those things because they don't want to panic you. And it's just like the spy jets and nuclear weapons of the Cold War era. If they just came out and told the public, yes, those are American spy jets, and they're designed to hunt down nuclear weapons, then they would scare the hell out of everybody. Why are you looking for nukes around my neighborhood? But on top of that, by coming clean as to what's happening, they also have to admit what kind of technology they're using. And it's not just that they don't want us to know, but they also don't want enemy nations to know what kind of technology they're employing. And on top of that, they seem to want to avoid letting us know just how severe these international tensions are. But it seems like some of these Chinese organizations don't even care if we know that they're spying on us. A few years ago, a Chinese organization implemented a giant hack on the United States. And the craziest part was that they didn't even really cover their tracks. They made it kind of obvious that it was them. Some of the hackers even bragged about it. But it seems as if there's nothing anybody can do about the hack, and it seems like there will be no rectification for this event. I'm telling you guys, we've been in a Cold War. Yo, and since I finished filming that, I googled the term China hacks America, and yeah, they've done it like a ton of more times since then. Just recently, they've hacked the Navy, and currently, as we're speaking, China is still hacking American telecoms. So, things are not chill. At the time that China was kicking a bunch of Western companies out of their nation and they were banning iPhones and Teslas, YouTube was banning a bunch of channels back then as well, right around the beginning of 2020. And most of them seemed to be political channels or news channels. And a few of them were even entertainment with a political spin, of course. All of these channels were supposedly banned for failing to disclose their political affiliation. Basically, a lot of these were Chinese or even Russian channels that were created to look like they were Western channels. The presenters on those fake Western channels often were fake Americans. Basically, a bunch of these were either Chinese or sometimes Russian-run channels. And usually the presenter on the program was a fake American. I mean, like somebody pretending to be an American living in America. Like often they were hiring people born in like Hong Kong or something, and then they would pretend to be an American. They'd be like, well, as an American, I think this. Well, as an American, this is my experience. I actually made fun of one of these channels back in the day, and I didn't even realize that that's what they were. I just thought they were some stupid conspiracy theory channel. And I always kept saying they had this weird, uncanny quality about them. Their content was strangely milquetoast, and then they would get really extreme about specific stuff. Well, now I know why. I didn't realize until after they got banned that channel was Chinese propaganda. But do you know what platform doesn't ban people for pretending to be an American? TikTok. There are a ton of people on TikTok pushing anti-American propaganda. I can get through this. There are a bunch of people on TikTok pretending to be Americans pushing anti-American propaganda. I did it. I mean, who cares, right? Fuck America. But the game that these presenters are playing is really nefarious. A lot of these guys will be all energetic and entertaining, and maybe it seems like they're just trying to get to the truth of stuff, or just having fun thinking about this stuff, or maybe they're just trying to inform you on something that they don't want you to know. When in reality, they're just trying to get you to lose faith in the United States. They're trying to create chaos inside the United States. It's designed to demoralize Westerners. That's why TikTok's so weird. That's why TikTok rewards people for being self-destructive. They don't care about us. They want us to do stupid things that humiliate us. Look, aliens are real, right? There are probably some sort of aliens living somewhere out there in the universe. But there are no aliens here, okay? The stuff that we're seeing in our skies or on the news is not aliens. Whatever it is that the government and the media is trying to tell us are aliens not aliens. There are no aliens. Shut the f*** up. I'm tired of being gaslit about this shit. Anyways, China has not just banned TikTok, though. They've banned all American social media apps and the vast majority of American websites in general. If you're in China, you cannot access YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, none of them. Sometimes you will see Chinese nationals posting on those platforms, sure, but those are usually hand-chosen people that are either government officials who need a public persona, or they're just propagandists serving to curate an image of China, or they're just bots. Oh, they've got bots too. If you ever say anything hypercritical of the Chinese government on any social media platform, the Chinese bots will eventually swarm you. I know it's happened to me. The reason the Chinese government would tell you that they don't want their citizens to have access to the international social media platforms is because they don't want to have them exposed to harmful Western propaganda. And there's truth to that, like I said. But in reality, the CCP really just wants total control of all of the propaganda that their citizens are exposed to. And the same thing goes for Russia. I mean, Putin keeps complaining that Western propaganda is corrupting his citizens. But he has control of his own propaganda. That doesn't make any sense. So the question is, why doesn't the American media do a better job of exposing China's spyware issue? Why won't the Americans do a better job of exposing the harmful effects of the propaganda created by the Chinese? Why won't the American military expose the Chinese spy drone issue? Why don't they do a better job of telling us just how badly China wants to watch everything? Because the West is doing the exact same things. They can't tell you that China is doing that shit Because then they'd have to admit that America is trying to do the exact same shit too. The Western media and Western social media constantly manipulates us with propaganda. That's their purpose. Western apps spy on everything we do too. They access all of our data and our microphones and cameras to monitor us. Some apps even watch what you do on other apps. And Western nations spy on the whole rest of the world with drones. We all knew that one already. I think people tend to forget just how much power the United States loves to exercise on the rest of the world. If the United States exposed China for what they were doing, then they would have to admit that they're playing the exact same game. Like I said, this was an old video idea. I started the original script before the Ukraine thing even happened. At the end of the video, I was going to make an uncomfortable prediction that all of these economic tensions, as well as all the other signs that we're in a Cold War, are going to start to result in international conflicts. Now we know they already have. There are a lot of conflicts, a lot of wars being fought right now, and a lot of them are really just about supplies and supply chains. This is just about resources. Everybody's got something that someone else wants. You've got one nation invading another because they really just want their farmland and to capture their economy. And you've got another nation invading a population center because they really just want the land to expand their own population. I mean, hell, the Suez Canal needs to be patrolled because cargo ships keep getting hit by rockets. Shit is getting tight out there. And China has been eyeing up Taiwan for quite a few years now, just waiting for an excuse to snatch it up. China has been producing maps for a few years now that imply that they have control over all of the Asian Ocean area. Like, they're insane. That's crazy, man. I'm telling you. China wants all of this ocean to themselves. In their minds, they already own it. Therefore, they already have control over all of the other Asian nations in that area. That's the implication they're making. And that is what they're trying to enforce. Did they tell you about that on the news? And this propaganda keeps getting subtly mixed in with a lot of Western media. That map was even implied in the Barbie movie. Is the Barbie movie Chinese propaganda? How did that happen? But China wants this because they want control over all of the resources and the supply chains in these areas. They want all the fish to themselves. It's all about resources. They're not playing anymore. My New Year's resolution is that I no longer want to make doom and gloom videos with depressing endings anymore. So this is my last one. Things are really bad right now, and they're only going to get worse. The big one is coming, and I think everybody knows it. I mean, some people are even doing countdowns to World War III. Hell, it's only a matter of time before they start bringing back conscription. Oh God. But that isn't today. That's not happening today. Today, all we can really focus on is keeping ourselves and our families comfortable and safe. Build up what you can to get through the hard times coming. Collect what you need to get through it. Focus on what's important. And that ain't gonna be money, because money isn't real anymore. But love is real. Love is real.